Some pictures never fade, even when you wish they would. One frame, one click, and everything unraveled. Stay till the twist. Ethan never believed in ghosts, or more accurately, he believed in logic, causality, and the reliability of perception. He was a forensic photographer for the state, and over 12 years he had seen more death through his lens than most morticians. Nothing haunted him. Not until the Douglas house. It was late October when the call came in. A double suicide. Father and son. The dispatcher sounded disturbed, which was unusual for the local precinct. Ethan had been sipping bitter black coffee when the words buzzed through the receiver like a faint scream. Both bodies are still in place. Basement. Sheriff said it's strange. That was all he needed. By the time Ethan arrived, the late afternoon sun was reduced to a copper gleam across the dying trees. The Douglas home sat at the end of a private road, swallowed by forest. The shutters were rotting. The lawn was a pelt of dead leaves. The house itself, gray and quiet, seemed to retreat from the world. A deputy met him at the door. "Basement's through the kitchen," he said. You'll see." Ethan nodded and pulled the Canon from his bag. His camera was custom, full spectrum, infrared capable, designed to reveal what the eye missed. He never went anywhere without it. The air inside the Douglas home was stale, like mold, old paper, and something underneath, grief maybe. The kind that lingered in wallpaper. Downstairs he found them. The father, Mark Douglas, was slumped against the far wall. A .38 revolver lay in his lap, blood dry on his temple. Across from him, near the washing machine, sat his son, Lucas, 15, maybe 16, rope dug into his neck, body leaning awkwardly from a rafter. But what arrested Ethan was not the method. It was their expressions. Both of them were smiling. Not wide, maniacal grins, but serene, peaceful. The kind of smile you'd see on someone watching rain after a drought. Ethan crouched, adjusted the lens, and began to shoot. Click. Mark's body first. Wide shot. Then medium. Then close-up of the wound. Click. Lucas next. The contrast between the violence of the act and the softness in his eyes made Ethan pause. He raised the camera again. Click. One more. A wide shot of both, framing the washing machine, and an old framed photograph above it. A black and white family portrait. The same father and son, younger, happier, the mother missing. He took that photo too. The lighting was strange. A shadow leaned across the frame where nothing should have cast it. He adjusted the settings. Took another. Click. Then, one more. Click. And something moved. He jerked back. Behind the lens, for a split second, he thought he saw Lucas blink. But the body was still. Of course it was. Bodies twitch, eyes dry out. The mind plays tricks. But the smile, that subtle smile. Ethan packed up and left without speaking. He processed the images at home as he always did. The resolution was crisp, almost eerily so. But something else bothered him. In each photo, the same thing, that dark shape, not quite a shadow, not quite a smudge, hovering near the edge of the frame. It seemed to be behind Lucas in one image, then behind Mark in the next. When he zoomed in, it wasn't blur. It had form, a narrow face, two eyes. No, not eyes. Voids. Ethan blinked, shook his head, zoomed out. Artifact, he muttered. Dust on the lens. Still, he ran the files through software. Nothing corrupted, no exposure issues, no dust. Yet every photo from the basement bore that silhouette, always near the figures. Watching. At 2:37 a.m., he gave up and shut down the eye. Dreams began the next night. He was back in the Douglas basement, but the scene was reversed. Lucas held the gun. Mark hung from the ceiling. Ethan stood between them, camera in hand, frozen. The smell was stronger, rotten. The light flickered from somewhere without a source. Then the smile. Both bodies turned to him, heads tilting in. perfect sync, eyes wide and bloodshot, lips parting in unison. "You took it," they whispered. Ethan jolted awake, sweat soaking his shirt. His apartment felt wrong. Too still. Too cold. He tried to sleep again, but he couldn't. 3 days later, Ethan's colleague Kyle dropped by to borrow a tripod. They sat in the kitchen for a while. Ethan didn't mention the dreams or the shadows. He didn't want to sound paranoid. Kyle noticed anyway. "You look like shit. Haven't slept much." Kyle sipped his coffee. "Saw the Douglas file. Nasty. But your shots were perfect. Eerie, though. You ever catch weird lighting like that before?" Ethan stared at him. "You saw it too?" Kyle nodded slowly. "That silhouette? I figured it was a reflection, but I swear." I zoomed in. "There's a face." Ethan said nothing. Later, after Kyle left, Ethan did what he hadn't dared. He printed the last photo. The wide shot of both bodies with the family picture. In frame. He printed it large, 11 by 14, laid it on the table. He stared, and the figure stared back. Its face was clearer now, thin, elongated, the suggestion of a mouth too wide, no lips. Just a rictus smile, pale and stretched. Its eyes were twin sockets of absence. He stepped away. The room felt darker, not just visually, but perceptually. Like a presence dimmed it. He grabbed the photo, marched to the fireplace and shoved it in. The paper curled, smoked, blackened. He watched until it was ash. But that night, the dream returned. This time, the figure was there. Not just behind them, but behind him, watching through the lens. "You took it," it whispered again. "You made it last." Ethan started seeing things, not always directly, but in glass, in windows, in puddles, in the edge of mirrors. Always that shape. Slight, just out of frame, and always smiling. He stopped leaving the apartment. He sealed his mirrors, shut his curtains, disconnected the doorbell, and still, it came. He heard it breathing behind him, felt the air go still when he tried to sleep. Objects moved, cold spread through the walls, and the photo, the one he'd burned, was back. It appeared one morning, on his kitchen table. No char, no burn marks, just pristine paper and that same image. The Douglas basement, the bodies, the smiles, the shadow. Ethan screamed, tore it to pieces, doused it in lighter fluid, watched it burn again. But the next morning, it was back, always back. He called Kyle. "I need help," he said. "I think something's following." "Me? From that photo?" Kyle didn't laugh. "I felt it too," he whispered. "I saw it, in my apartment. I didn't want to tell you." "Tell me what?" Kyle paused. "I took a copy of the photo for reference. It keeps coming back." Ethan's blood ran cold. "You burned it twice. It returns, and I dream of them, smiling, and something else." He didn't finish the sentence. "Come here," Ethan said. "We'll figure this out." An hour later, Kyle arrived. They sat at the table, the photo between them. "Maybe it's a visual trigger," Kyle said. "Like pareidolia, the brain making faces from patterns." "No," Ethan said. "It's real." Kyle looked at him, then nodded. "I believe you." They agreed to test something. They set up 2 cameras, one in Ethan's living room, one aimed at the photo. Left them running overnight. The next morning, both devices were fried. Memory cards melted, and the photo had moved. It now lay on Ethan's pillow. That was when Kyle suggested the unthinkable. "What if we go back? To the house?" Ethan stared. "Why? Maybe that thing is tied to the place. Maybe it wants something." Ethan didn't answer. But that night, he packed his gear. They arrived just before midnight. The Douglas house was silent, unchanged, windows black, door unlocked. They entered together. The stench was worse now, like something forgotten beneath the floorboards. The air was thick, metallic. Ethan led the way to the basement. Nothing had changed, no bodies, just the empty washing machine and the photograph still on the wall. The original one. Ethan raised the camera. "I shouldn't," he whispered. Kyle nodded. "But maybe you have to." He took the shot. Click, and the lights died. They were plunged into darkness. A sound rose, not from the basement, but from inside their own skulls. A droning hum, like static, layered with whispers. Ethan turned, and there it was, in the doorway. Not a man, not even a shape, but the suggestion of one. Black as absence, thin, smiling, always smiling. Kyle screamed, then he dropped. Ethan fell to his knees, his vision blurred, and the thing approached. "You made it last," it said. Its voice was not heard but imposed, a pressure behind the eyes. "You took the final image. You gave it form. You developed me." Ethan sobbed. "What are you?" The thing leaned down, face inches from his. "I am what watches, what waits. A frame needs a photographer. You gave me that." He raised the camera. "I'll delete it, burn it. You've already shared it." And then it was inside him, not physically, but behind the eyes, behind perception, behind thought. It entered the aperture of his mind and exposed him from within. When Ethan awoke, he was alone. No sign of Kyle, no memory of leaving the house. He was back in his apartment. The camera sat on the table. Next to it, the photo. Again. But this time, he was in it. Behind Lucas, smiling, his own eyes stared at him from the frame. And beside him stood the figure. He screamed, smashed the glass, burned it all, but he knew it would return. They found Kyle's body 2 days later, inside his studio, hung from the ceiling, smiling. The camera was on a tripod. A fresh photo still loaded. It showed Kyle, lifeless, and behind him, Ethan, smiling. The coroner called Ethan personally. "I thought you should know. Your friend. He left something." "What?" "A note. Scribbled." Ethan waited. It said, "He took the last photograph. Now we're all in the frame." Ethan moved, burned his apartment, changed his name, quit his job. But wherever he went, it followed. Every camera he touched, every reflective surface, every dark corner. The figure waited, and the photo would always find him, sometimes in the mail, sometimes slipped under doors. Once, it appeared inside his locked suitcase. Each time, the same progression. More people in the frame, all men, all smiling, all watching. He stopped sleeping, stopped eating, started walking. He ended up in Montana, at a cabin with no electricity, no mirrors, no glass. He lived in silence, ate only canned beans, no visitors. But on the 66th day, he woke to find the photograph on his floor. This time, there were dozens in the frame, and in the very back, the faintest outline, was him. But not as he was, as the figure. He wept for hours, and then he took the camera. He found an old mirror, cracked and coated with dust. He lifted the lens, framed himself, and clicked. The police found the cabin weeks later. Inside, a single body, a man with no identification. Mirror shattered beside him, and in his lap, a photograph. It showed the room, empty. But in the mirror's reflection, a man stood, smiling. Behind him, a thin, dark shape watched with hunger. That photo now resides in an evidence locker in Helena. But strange things happen there. Lights flicker, cameras malfunction, and some officers say, if you stare long enough, the man in the mirror starts to move and smiles.